expectations. We all have them. We're disappointed if they're not met. Sometimes we get downright angry if we don't see what we expect. We're going to talk about expectations in the game industry coming up. Hey, this is Mark, Game Industry Rundown. Today, we're going to talk about expectations. In my business, I can safely say that over the course of 27 years, virtually most, if not all, of the negative interactions that I've had with customers has always been because there was a difference in expectations, and that difference was large enough to create conflict. Most negative reviews that we see on Google are almost always from somebody who had expectations of the service that we provide, and then either we failed to provide that service or didn't provide the service up to the level of expectation that they had. That sounds kind of like a big, long worded way of saying, we pissed them off, which, it could be that. But today, I'd like to kind of dig into some of the expectations, both from the customer side and from the business side, and talk about how sometimes we're just not going to be able to meet those expectations. One of the biggest expectations customers have in a game store is demos and game space. A hot topic of discussion lately. I just got back from a trade show at ACD Distribution, and the one seminar that I went to was given by somebody who was talking about his process for charging to use his game space. And it was very well presented. He made a great argument, and ultimately, I just don't think that's going to work for me in my area because I think about customer expectations. And customer expectations have lots of factors that contribute to what they expect. Some of it is, just because they're a human being and they're alive. They expect some basic courtesy. If customers come in and you're just rude to them and don't give them any attention, don't expect them to come back if you do that. But for the sake of argument, we'll just get past all of that obvious stuff and talk about in my particular area, there is an expectation that gaming space is free, and that if there's open tables and chairs, sit down and use them. As long as we're playing a game, whether the store sells the game or not, as long as it's a game from the tabletop industry, we're mostly going to be okay. And that expectation is usually met by, I would guess, most of the competitors in my area. I'm not familiar or privy to the rules or regulations or how any of my competitors manage their game space. I am strictly going off perception, which, could be flawed. And if it is, please let me know in the comments. Before we go any further, I should say that I have no illusions where I am in the world. I'm nobody. I'm just a guy that owns a game store. I'm not special. Nobody owes us anything. I have expectations of my own. Sometimes instead of expectation, a better phrase would be hope or dream. But my expectation is if I have my play space be open and free for you to use, my hope, bordering expectation, is that if you choose to buy something in the game industry and it's something that I have on my shelf, my hope is that you would buy it from me, but I don't know that I would cross into fully expect that. So, I fully understand that the customer's money is the customer's money. They can spend it wherever they want. They have no accountability to me if they played in our Warhammer League for 6 weeks and then they buy their Warhammer models somewhere else. I don't really have a problem with that. I hope if they play in our league that they would choose us to buy the Warhammer models from. But I get it, for whatever reason, they chose somebody else, and I'm okay with that. Most of customer expectations come around either availability or price. When it comes to availability, they have expectations that the product will be on the shelf on the specified street date, in quantity that, hopefully it's not sold out before they get there. When it comes to price, customers have a preconceived kind of a range of what they believe a fair price for an item is. And in the game industry, we talk about MSRP. There are sites out there in Amazon that deal in some percentage off MSRP, which leads us to, for most items, the accepted price range is MSRP on the high end and some agreed on percentage off MSRP on the low end. For the sake of argument, we'll say 20% off is, the low end where someone would sell a product online, 20% off free shipping is probably the best price you're going to find if you look for it. So that creates the range of MSRP at the high end and 20% off at the low end. If you try to find that product for less than 20% off, you may find it, but you'll introduce some doubt or risk. It's a website that, for whatever reason, doesn't appear to be reputable, or all of the items listed on Amazon are right at that 20% off, and then you have some lone seller who is at 35% off, and whether you actually get the right product or not, you're not sure. So we get a range. The general public as a group is mostly okay with that range. You will get resistance if you try to go outside of that range, especially on the high end. In the game industry, MSRP is pretty much considered top dollar. There's not a lot of products that would be evergreen and continuously sell at more than MSRP. The only time items sell for more than MSRP is during times of product shortages, Most recently, some of the Kill Team chapter boxes from Games Workshop. Stores were limited to some ridiculously low amount of copies, 2 or 4. Those boxes are currently going for more than MSRP on eBay. That's an exception. That's not really a rule. If that product was readily available, no one would pay over MSRP for it. It's MSRP or some percentage less, depending on how hard you're willing to look for it. Customers have expectations as to the services that we provide. I said in the beginning that most of the negative reviews that we've gotten over the years have been the result of customer having an expectation that we were not able or willing to meet. And, I get it. Sometimes, from their point of view, if they have another game store option that is meeting that expectation for them, then yes, we failed, and I can't dispute the fact that they gave us a negative review. When we get negative reviews, though, we do read them all, for starters. It's not like we put our head in the sand. We do read them all and kind of process what the complaint is. A lot of times, negative reviews are written to be incendiary. A lot of times, negative reviews are written to be incendiary and spiteful, and sometimes, to be revenge against, a store that didn't meet the expectations. We pick apart the actual complaint and we take that to task and see if, were we deficient in something? Is there something we could have done differently to prevent this? One I would like to mention is we had a situation once where a woman came in with a screenshot on her phone of exactly the item that her husband or boyfriend or significant other, whoever he was, had sent her in to get on the way home from her job. And she came in, she was very out of her element, came into our store. We had several card game players kind of grouped up at the counter, which I know some retailers will consider that a problem in itself, but it happens. And this woman was in a position where she uncomfortably had to pass through a group of card game players to the department where the item was located that she was sent to retrieve. She showed the phone picture to one of the staff, and the staff said, "Yep, sure, we got that right here." Took care of her purchase, rang her up, and on the way out, one of the card game players said, and this isn't a quote, this is an actual quote here, that is an extraordinarily efficient way to shop. And this lady misheard that on the way out and believed that the card game player had said something derogatory about either her appearance or her mannerisms, or, she really took offense that somebody in this group of card players, said something about her as she walked out the door. And they left us a negative review. As a result of that review, we have the ability, and it was prior to this incident, we've kind of always had this, but we have many cameras in our store that record audio, and we were able to review the recordings of this interaction and determine exactly, what the card player had said. And Prior to looking at the videos, nobody really remembered what he said. The staff didn't actually hear it. There was, a bunch of reasons why we didn't know. So we looked at the video and saw, what he had said, that's an extraordinarily efficient way to shop. And once we realized that, we contacted the person who had made the review and explained the situation and offered to let them come back to the store and see and hear the recording for themselves. We don't ever release those recordings publicly unless it's something like a theft or, a break-in, which fortunately we haven't had. Mostly those recordings are just for internal use, but we offered them, and, she was apologetic, thanked us for handling the situation, and, they've come in several times since, and everything's fine. So, long-winded story about sometimes you can meet expectations, and sometimes you don't meet expectations, but you can if you give it some effort. So, as a store owner, one of the things I consider all the time in other video, I talked about a SWOT analysis. That was the video where we talked about competitors. But quickly, a SWOT analysis stands for strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And customer expectations are something that could go into any one of those 4 quadrants, depending on the angle that you're considering. Threats could be something like customers coming in with expectations of how they should be treated or the products that they're going to be able to find, and somehow your store doesn't meet those expectations, coupled with the potential of a staff not handling that disappointment correctly or in the most optimum manner. That could create a situation where you're going to get a negative review and, perhaps deserve a negative review. That would be a threat. Opportunities are always going to be, what can you do to better meet customers' expectations? Sometimes, I've been doing this 27 years, there are customers that have unrealistic expectations. I believe that. There's nothing I can do about it. I hope they find gaming nirvana somewhere, but I have to concede that it may not be with us. That's just the reality. The key is to convey that we're not going to be able to meet those expectations in the most polite way possible, and hopefully in a way that makes them understand that we're not targeting them or trying to be mean to them. We're just unable to meet whatever the expectation is. Sometimes that's a challenge. So this has just been kind of an introduction into the thought process of managing expectations. I believe we'll probably have more than a couple videos on this subject. Many times, expectations just are unrealistic. Sometimes they're low. Sometimes you get beaten into submission. We're dealing with Games Workshop and their fear of missing out tactic of only letting us get 2 copies of a particular Kill Team expansion, when, if I had to pick the favorite customers at the store who should get one, I would need 8 or 10. What am I supposed to do with 2? But now they've kind of lowered expectations going into the Leviathan box for 10th edition, where maybe if we get more than 2, we'll be happy that we got more than 2. I don't know. Expectations. We'll talk about this more, I'm sure, but I think we're going to cut the video here for now. My name is Mark. If I met your expectations for this video, let me know. If I didn't meet your expectations for this video, also let me know. Tell me what you really think. It's okay. I can take it. We'll see you next time.